Hello and welcome to our next battle report. This battle report is for the Battle of Hanover in the winter of 1740 between Austria and the forces of England and Sweden. Battle takes place on battlefield number 65 of the second edition Age of Reason rulebook. It's a fairly wide open battlefield. There's a small town in the center. To the south of that is a field with walls which provide linear obstacle and cover. The other two fields, there are fences represented, but they just represent linear obstacles. They don't provide any cover. The Austrian army is comprised of two 18 casting line units, and even though there's a grenadier unit, that actually represents a light infantry unit of 12 castings, as well as a medium battery. That comprises the 1st Brigade. The 2nd Brigade consists of two cuirassier cavalry units, and then there's also a subgeneral present to command the whole army. The Allied army comprises of three Swedish SP and two British SP. The British have one line unit and then one militia unit, which is due to the territory of Hanover, plus one subgeneral. And the Swedes have two line units and a brigade, and the 2nd Brigade is a dragoon, and there's also a Swedish subgeneral present. We rolled for light snow, which quarters movement and firing ranges, and there's also a chance for wet powder. And the final setup, the Austrians are the near side of the board. The two cavalry units are kind of spread to the left side. Infantry is to the right. The light infantry is in the middle. And the line infantry is to the right with the artillery in the middle of them. And the Allied army on the other side is hiding behind the town. They also had 6 inches of breastworks that they split into two 3-inch sections to essentially use to cover the flanks. Pointing at the two line units, that's a militia unit and a British line unit, and then the Swedish dragoon unit. Turn 1 normal movement opens up with the Austrian infantry making the initial move by advancing straight forward. Again, because it's light snow, their movement rate is reduced. The light infantry advances into the field south of the town, followed by the cavalry, which the 1st regiment of cavalry advances, and the 2nd holds their position. English militia starts advancing into the town, while the line unit sidesteps to get better cover behind the wall, while the Swedish infantry also does the same. Unit behind maintains its position. Swedish dragoons shift their position and advance down the road to the east. Going to turn 2, open with the English militia advancing and securing the town. Swedish dragoons continuing their advance east of town. Followed by the Austrians, they move forward into line for the 2nd Regiment. The 1st Regiment advances forward. And then the light infantry, deciding whether to advance directly into the town, but realizing they don't have enough time to do so, they decide to advance into line behind the cover. Seeing the Swedish dragoons advance to the east, the 2nd Austrian cuirassiers decide to counter their move while the 1st advance forward. 3rd turn, the Swedish dragoons about face, and they begin moving. They can start condensing their frontage in order to move along the road. And the Swedish line infantry in the rear goes into square formation, defensive formation. English militia goes into all-around defense, which basically they use the entire town as a defensive position, and then the leader attaches to them, which we represented by marking in the center. And here the two Austrian regiments advance forward. Cuirassiers again advance towards the road. This is the main Swedish road they're advancing towards. Small arms fire. Uh, the skirmish infantry attacked or fired at the infantry in the town, and they got one casualty. The casual unit in the town did not, or they succeeded on the morale roll. There, the Cuirassiers captured the road, so the English and the Swedish have penalties due to losing their main road, and the Swedish cavalry, you can see, moved forward through the town. Austrian infantry advancing. The second unit went into column and forgot to actually get that change on video, but here they decided to actually switch their direction so they didn't have to go through the field. Turn 4, small arms fire. The skirmishers are attacking the town again, but this time they do not succeed. The town's shooting back, and they do not succeed. And that side of the town is attacking the Austrian line, which they do get one hit. Advantage of being an all-around defense is essentially, even though it's one unit, each side gets to fire independently. Turn 5. Austrian line willing to move into position against the town. While these guys work around the edge of the field. Austrian Cuirassiers go into line, and the Austrian Cuirassiers in the rear about face and start moving the other direction to help give support against the Swedish Dragoons that are moving through town. Swedish Dragoons move into line to face the Austrian Cuirassiers. Austrian artillery, having moved in position previous turn, fires on the town, does not hit. Again, the skirmishers attack the town. They roll a 1, and their side moves in response. They roll a 1 also, so both sides have wet powder and can't shoot. Charge declaration. The cavalry is going to be charging each other. That's the Swedish morale to charge, and that's the Austrian morale to charge. They both charge and they make contact with each other. Austrian infantry moves up to the town to get into firing range, and the infantry behind keeps moving around the field. Second Austrian Cuirassiers again coming around to provide support. Swedish unit in square decides to go into column, and the Swedish unit behind the fence decides to advance to meet the second Austrian regiment approaching. Those guys move up to take position. Artillery fire. Again, the Austrians shooting against the town. They miss. Again, that side of the town is attacking the infantry, and they miss as well. Fighting the melee. That's the Austrian melee roll. The small dice doesn't count, and there's the Swedish melee roll. So the Austrians caused 2 casualties against the Swedes. The Swedes caused 1 casualty against the Austrians. Austria needed to roll. That's an attack against the Austrian leader, and that's an attack against the Swedish leader. No damage. Tried to capture the colors. They do not. And then here's the roll to determine how the melee resulted. It ended up in the Swedes routing, and they have to roll, move. Basically, the total roll was off the board, so they routed off the board. And this is a roll to see if the Austrians pursue, and they do pursue and become disorganized due to the melee combat. Turn 7 rally phase. The Dragoons off field needed to roll a 1 or a 2, and they rolled a 6, so they did not rally that turn. Again, the Austrians are moving forward. Swedes in the rear going into line. Artillery firing against the town. Finally succeed in causing 1 casualty. The unit in town had enough morale dice that they didn't need to roll. They had 6 and they were going to succeed, so they didn't need to. That side fires against the Austrian infantry, causing 1 casualty against the Austrians. The Austrians fire back, causing 1 casualty of their own. This time there was 5 dice, even though they were likely going to roll, and as they saw in that roll, they did. That's the second morale roll for the Swedish Dragoons, and they missed the morale roll, so that was their second attempt. They did not rally, so they count as casualties. So the Swedes have 12 casualties now. There's the Austrians shooting at the town. They missed. Or excuse me, that was an attempt to charge. They did not make the charge. Austrians advancing. Cuirassiers advancing to support. And attempting to fire against the town with the artillery. They do not cause a casualty. First, we have the side of the town attacking the Austrian infantry, and they do not cause a casualty. Swedish infantry fire against the Austrian infantry. They do cause 2 casualties. Austrians firing against the town, not causing a casualty. The Swedes had enough casualties to force an army withdrawal check. That's how many dice they had to roll, and they rolled more than 12. That was the actual amount they got. So the Swedes had to vacate the field, leaving only the English line and the English militia left to fight against the Austrians. Austrian cuirassiers rallied, even though they probably should have done during turn 8. This is the Austrian infantry is attacking the town, and that was a fire on the charge, point blank, doing no damage. Austrians artillery attempts to fire on the town to cause a morale roll, and they didn't. And the English stand and fight against the English or Austrian line. English movement, they just moved forward. Austrian cuirassiers are sidestepping to the side. Those cuirassiers advancing again for support. Austrians advancing ahead to gain the lost ground. Turn 9 melee. Austrians get 2.5 dice, and Swedes get 2.5 dice. The green and small dice are considered half dice, so if they get a 4 or more, they don't count. Austrians roll 1 casualty. That die doesn't count. And the Swedes roll 1 casualty because the green die doesn't count. And since they both got 1 casualty, the units are locked in melee. That's damage against the English commander that was attached. There was no damage. Turn 10. Since there's an ongoing melee, the skirmishers charge in on the flank. Again, the English moving forward, just obliquing a little bit. Austrian infantry advancing. Going to turn 10 melee, we start with the Austrian line infantry side. They roll a 3, rolling 1 die, causing no damage, whereas on the other side, the English militia do cause 1 damage against the Austrians. That's to capture the Austrian colors, which they do. The English capture the Austrian colors, and then the Austrians have to fall back broken, facing away from the enemy. And here we have the light infantry trying to roll for their melee, rolling only 1 die, causing no casualties. And the English in response do cause 1 casualty against the Austrians, light infantry. Melee results in the Austrians just falling back disorganized. Turn 11 normal movement. The Austrian cuirassiers fall back. The Austrian infantry advances to the English rear, and then the English sidestep to their left. Artillery fire, since there's no more melee against the town, the artillery can shoot, causing no casualties. Conversely, the Austrian town now can also shoot, which they do against the Austrian flank. causing no casualties. Turn 12, charge declaration. The Austrian infantry charges the English rear, getting a 1 on their initiative, which means they do charge and move into contact. The Austrian cavalry roll for morale to try to make it, and they got more than 6, so they do make it. They do attempt to charge. The English try to fire out a charge, getting close range, causing 3 casualties against the English cavalry advancing against them, which is 1 stand and 1 pip. Austrian leader attempt. There's a possibility for an Austrian casualty, but they end up rolling for no result. But they do continue the charge. The British, on the other hand, do not make their morale roll, so they retreat broken, and that's the only way they can go. Austrians try to make one last shot against the English in the town. Rolling snake eyes means they get wet powder and can no longer shoot, which is okay because it's the last turn. And the English try to make one last parting shot against the Austrians, which they do, taking 1 more casualty against that unit, which they lose that stand. After 12 turns, because of the snow, that means it was the end of the battle. Ultimately, what resulted is the English only had 4 casualties, but they needed to have 6 to be able to roll for the draw, so they maintained control of the territory. They succeeded in their roll for casualties, so they do not lose an SP. Sweden withdrew earlier with 1 SP casualties, and they retreated to Prussia. Austria is forced to retreat because they couldn't win. Losing 1 SP, they retreated into Westphalia. It was a fun battle. It was a complete battle, literally going down to the very last turn. In hindsight, after reviewing the video for this battle, we realized that we did the routing rolls for the Swedish dragoons incorrectly. They should have sat for 1 turn before we started rolling, but ultimately it wouldn't have made much of a difference. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.